right? You've heard me say this in our Storage Wins community coaching calls, but to me, progress equals happiness, right? You know that we're cut from the same cloth in terms of let's get clear about what we want, but then let's focus on the micro daily wins that when stacked consistently, and that's the operative word, will lead to that macro win, that storage win, no pun intended, or I should say pun intended.
To touch on one of the things that you mentioned a little while ago in this podcast was not being concerned that the results haven't happened yet, that it's inevitable. I don't remember who said this last week. They mentioned that every 30 to 50 offers, you're gonna get a deal. And it's not guaranteed, but it's just a rough estimate. And just hearing that made me think, yeah, it's a quantity game. It's not a quality game. So just to get those numbers up.
So don't be necessarily attached to, hey, I got to get to that 50th offer, but just be more attached to the process, knowing that by making offers consistently, you're giving yourself more opportunities and you're more likely to get the right deal under contract. Because that's the idea here, Dan. Like, I can help you or anybody buy their first storage deal like a lot quicker than 6 to 12 months. But it's not just about buying a storage deal, it's about buying the right storage deal. All right, we are back with another Storage Wins podcast here, and I got my friend and coaching client Dan Wenzel here on the show. And I believe, Dan, this is the 6th episode, I want to say, here of season 2 on the Storage Wins podcast. And man, it's as I was kind of just recapping what we have covered so far in the previous episodes, I'm so excited, man, that you just opened up to do this and to kind of have people walk alongside this journey. So guys, if you haven't had an opportunity to check out the previous episodes, I want to encourage you to do that after this one. Episode 1, we started with Dan's story, why he chose storage, what was driving him towards making this decision, and the investment of not just money, but time. Episode 2, we talked about his freedom number. We nailed that down and started to build a plan. He chose a date, the goal that he was going to accomplish buying his first storage facility on. And the truth is that you're on a journey with us. I don't know if he's going to end up buying his first storage facility by the end of November. I believe he is. And part of him being on here and allowing himself to be coached live on the podcast is there's a sense of accountability. So I think there's something to be said for that, like publishing your goals and what it is you're looking to accomplish with the right people. So again, Dan, I honor you, brother. I commend you for putting yourself out there. Episode 3, we started to get more tactical around the playbook, right? LMAO, L, building your list consistently. And Dan now has a virtual assistant doing that. M, having meaningful conversations with storage owners, investors, brokers, wholesalers, etc. Then A is analyzing deals, right? We want to be analyzing at least a couple of deals a day. And then the O is offers, right? You got to make the offer in order to put yourself in a position to be able to buy. And then just the key habits around building unstoppable momentum. So episode 4, we started to get, sometimes it's not so much about the tactical, it's about the mindset, right? And making sure that we're tracking, because what you measure grows and expands. And so we have to track the important key performance indicators. And we just continue to streamline his offer process. And then last week, Dan, this is where I want to hand the baton over to you, brother. Do me a favor. Can you just give everybody listening a recap as to what we covered last week? Because the idea here is to continue to build, right? You've heard me say this in our Storage Wins community coaching calls, but to me, progress equals happiness, right? You know that we're cut from the same cloth in terms of let's get clear about what we want, but then let's focus on the micro daily wins that when stacked consistently, and that's the operative word, will lead to that macro win, that storage win, no pun intended, or I should say pun intended. So with that being said, man, last episode, talk to us, give us a recap as to what we covered and then what your biggest takeaway was. And then I'd love to hear any updates, any wins, any challenges, and then we'll build from there.
Yeah, I agree with everything you said there about progress being happiness. It feels like we have built over the last several weeks, and it definitely feels good. Last week we touched on a way to value a storage facility without having much info without even having a a revenue number from the seller, a way to just do it based on square footage and uh, the rates in the market to come up with
And
an
how
offer.
long did that process? So if I gave you the square footage of a facility right now, how long might it take you to underwrite the deal or analyze, at least come up with a ballpark of what the value is today?
I haven't gone through it too much, honestly. To do that method, it's
But the point is,
I don't
look,
know,
it could be that.
roughly 10 or 15 minutes.
Yeah, look,
Yeah,
you could as long as really it's just a calculator, it's a math equation. Once you pick 2 or 3 competitors in a 5 mile radius and you get the average of the 10 by 10s just as a baseline, 2 minutes max. You can literally do back of the napkin analysis on a storage deal without having the revenue number and just having the net rentable square feet of the facility. It's another method. It's something I call offer optimization, just to be able to just quickly get a ballpark, right? So I want to encourage you, man, to practice that method as a way to just, because remember, one of the things we talked about in a previous episode was that we have to get your volume of offers up in order to, it's a numbers game, right? Just like when you have X number of conversations with storage owners, they're not all going to want to sell. And even the ones that do want to sell might be asking for something that you just doesn't make sense. You might not be able to do. So it's a numbers game, man. I want to encourage you to continue to have those meaningful conversations. And then we pretty much want to make some sort of offer on with most, if not all, storage owners that we talk to, because even if it doesn't fit your buy box, which by the way is one of the other things that we've talked about in a previous storage wins episode, even if it doesn't fit your buy box, if it's a deal, if you can get it at the right price or terms, it's an opportunity for you to wholesale it, right, to somebody within the storage wins community, in the private storage wins Facebook group, or even outside of that community. So yeah, we talked about that. What else did we cover last week?
yeah, like you just touched on, is with each meaningful conversation to get my offer volume up, and in order to do that, to make an offer, at least some kind of price guidance to the seller on where I'd be likely be with an offer, and give the seller a reason why they should share something with me. And I've done that with some of my calls already, and it's worked. So it was
Yeah.
in order to get you the highest offer that I can you provide the revenue for the business over the last 6 months or year and a half?
Have you noticed more storage owners being willing to share that information, or have you just found it to be beneficial to be able to frame the question in a certain way?
Yeah, perfect. It's worked really well. And sometimes the owners were just open to sharing that information, but
Yeah.
one specifically that I think has turned out to be a strong lead. The guy right really early in the conversation said, "There's no way I'm gonna share the revenue number with you just in this phone call." And then we ended up talking for way longer than I anticipated. And as the conversation went on, he was open to sharing that. So,
Fantastic.
um,
Well, he started to like you, like in all likelihood. You built a certain level of trust and rapport with him. And that's why he was willing to share, because you kind of put his guard down. You made him feel safe. You probably made him feel very comfortable. And he realized that you were credible and that you weren't just some Joe Schmo calling about his storage facility. Yeah, and what Dan is referring to, if you didn't have an opportunity to listen to the last episode, or maybe you just don't remember, is comes from the book Influence by Robert Cialdini. And last week I gave the example of the people in line at to make photocopies, and the difference between those that just asked to cut the front of the line versus the ones that gave them a reason why they needed to make the photocopy before them. So use that, right? You should always, always, always be a student of 3 things: leadership, marketing, and sales, right? Leadership, marketing, and sales are 3 knives, so to speak, that I always want you to be sharpening. And then you can apply that to storage. You can apply that to any business. You understand and you're good at those 3 skills. you'll never starve, you'll never go broke. So Dan, with that being said, man, I want to, this is interesting, and I don't think I've done a very good job of sharing this in the past, but while these are coaching sessions, it's a bit different because obviously we're doing it in the form of a podcast, right? Usually, and because we've had offline like one-on-one conversations. My job as a coach is to ask more questions and do less talking. On the podcast, I'm providing some bumpers and I'm adding we're going deeper and explaining certain things for the benefit of everybody listening. It still is a coaching session, no doubt about it. But on just a coaching session that wasn't going to be aired as a podcast, I'd probably be doing less talking. So this episode, I want to do a little bit less talking and I want you to do more talking. And here's what I mean by that is I want you to be the pilot here and I'll be the co-pilot. I'll guide you, right? I'll make sure that, but I want you to take control of the wheel here. And around this time, about a month and a half into coaching, when people have consistently been doing the work, I find that you start to gain a little bit of traction and momentum. And now you ever like as a kid grab the kaleidoscope, right? And maybe some of the newer generation that might be listening to the podcast have to like jump on ChatGPT and they don't even know how to spell kaleidoscope, right? But you start to kind of like twist, your hands around the kaleidoscope and the picture starts to get a little bit more clear and it starts to get into focus. I find that around the month to 3 month mark, for people that are consistently putting in the time, energy, and effort, the image starts to the fog starts to lift and it starts to get a little bit more clear. But that doesn't mean your questions go away. So now that you've kind of rolled up your sleeves and you've gotten into it, you've had meaningful conversations, you're making offers, give me an update as to how things have gone from the previous episode, the previous coaching call to today. What are your wins? Like, what can you celebrate? And then what are your questions and or challenges?
Some of the wins, I think, are that I've built some good momentum. Although we've set KPIs for each week and I haven't necessarily hit them each time.
We're going to talk about that.
I definitely have gotten my volume of everything way higher than it was. And so again, I made 4 offers this past week and now that's 2 weeks in a row. And I've gotten my call volume way up and just been working on quantity and not making sure everything is perfect for each one. And it's helped build momentum by getting that volume up for each of those metrics. My underwriting and analysis, I've been hosting some calls where, as you know, I've been kind of guiding others as to how to use the analysis spreadsheet that I'm using. And just by doing that, it has, with the storage rooms community, just by doing that, it's really boosted my, I don't know if it's my ability or comfortability with using the spreadsheet. So I'm much more efficient getting through that. Just before this call, I was telling you right before we started recording that I found a deal that I wanted to analyze, and I didn't know if we were going to look at it maybe during this call. So just in the last 30 minutes before the call, I put it all through the spreadsheet to see what it looked like and basically did it all there in 30 minutes. So things are kind of going in the right direction.
So here's what I'm hearing. Progress. And I think you're a very like quiet, chill dude just by nature, like just by personality. So and I can, I know you, so it might not be translating on the podcast that there's like this progress, this momentum you feel, it builds your energy and excitement and it feeds, right? When you're confident, you do more. And when you do more, you get more results. And when you get more results, it feeds your confidence. And it's this like cycle. If we were on a whiteboard, I could illustrate it a lot easier than I probably just explained it. Now, conversely, I think, fortunately or unfortunately, depending on how you look at it, the opposite is also true. When you're not taking action and there's a lack of momentum, it's a withdrawal from your confidence account. That withdrawal from your confidence account makes you not act or not act as consistently, which then produces not the results you're looking for, at least not in the time frame in which you'd like them. And then it's again. So the question is, are you making deposits into your confidence account or are you making withdrawals? The fact that you almost sent out an offer a day, at least during the week, the fact that I challenged you, months ago, hey, why don't you jump in the Storage Wins community and put out there that you're going to be underwriting deals for an hour. You're going to do the work anyway. Why not have people mirror you and treat it like a mastermind session? And I told you, not only is that going to give you more confidence, but it's going to open up doors and opportunities because others, and how many times have I told you this, others in the community see you as a leader, especially when it comes to underwriting deals, right? It doesn't mean you have everything figured out, right? That's okay. I don't think most people have everything figured out, right? You're always going to be learning. So really the takeaway I'm hoping people hear is that when you start to learn something, I've always believed, Dan, and I don't know if I've shared this with you, but we should act as a funnel, right? So God opens up certain doors and opportunities, puts certain people in our life. We learn something, or we have one hand up to a coach or a mentor. I believe you should act as a funnel, and when you receive good information, pass that along, and have one hand down, bringing somebody up. And you really, really want to learn something. You want to get better at a certain skill, learn it, and then teach it. Really learn, implement / execute. You're going to learn so much more by implementing and executing, and then teach it. And by the way, it can even be teaching like what went wrong or what mistakes you made or what lessons you made. That's how you start to gain a lot of progress, momentum. You start to become just a craftsman. Like you really start to sharpen that axe. So I remember 2-3 months ago, you felt significantly less confident about analyzing deals than you do today. True or false?
Very true.
Yeah, and you get the credit, dude, because I challenge you, and every single day you've been underwriting at least one deal. So why don't we do this? I want to talk about. You don't have to obviously share any like details on the address or anything like that, or any like particulars. But within our Storage Wins private Facebook group, which by the way, everybody, if you're not part of the Storage Wins Facebook group, there should be a link in the show notes, and if not, you can just search Storage Wins. And it's a private Facebook group where a wholesaler posted a deal that kind of caught my eye, and I didn't have an opportunity to like really dive deep into it, but I sent it over to Dan. And Dan, it sounds like you pretty much went through the analysis portion of that within the last, 30 minutes or so? Or within 30 minutes, I should say.
Yep.
Okay,
Yeah.
So I want to get into that, and we can kind of treat it like a little mini case study. But before we do that, are there any questions? Is there anything, do you feel stuck anywhere? And we may address it on the spot, or we may address it at some point here in this podcast.
Nothing comes to mind right now. It feels like it's just putting my head down and chopping wood and carrying water, as the saying goes. Doing the work, trying to just make calls, make offers.
Do you feel like you've been able to be, I know one of the things we talked about was like really controlling, like owning your time and your calendar and being intentional about like time blocking, working in sprints, not marathons. You have 4, 5, 6 hours a day, and it's not so much the time we're spending, it's the quality of the time that we have to spend on storage. And we talked about time blocking, certain 90-minute, 2-hour chunks of like having meaningful conversations. We talked about time blocking half an hour to an hour to underwrite deals, etc. Do you feel like that's been helpful for you and it's allowed you to kind of get into a flow with what you're doing?
It's given me a framework to work with.
Okay.
And I haven't been able to follow it to the T, but at least I know each day I'm starting making calls for 2 to 3 hours. And then if during that time I get a deal that I want to look at further, if I have a good conversation and get enough information from the seller or the owner to analyze that, then I'll do that as the afternoon comes around.
Okay.
And then the offers just kind of happen on the phone mostly when I'm talking to sellers. So as the day goes on, if if I'm not actually sending an LOI to an owner, it's just a soft offer on the phone, then that's generally when those happen.
Yeah.
But yeah, the framework is mostly just making calls in the morning, um, afternoon also if I have some extra time, and then underwriting a deal.
Okay. Okay. Got it. Look, man, it sounds like you're doing the right things. I want to encourage you that, because sometimes at this stage and maybe even later, right? People sometimes their enthusiasm tends to wane or it fluctuates based on the fact that they feel like they should be further along in the process. And I know that you and I have had several conversations about that. Persistence equals profit. I want you to always remember that in your head, is that while you may be talking to a seller and he wants too much or she wants too much or it doesn't make sense, it's another conversation. It's another building block that you're putting down, right? And you're building that confidence bucket. So continue to do these actions and these activities, execute on that. The results are inevitable. They will come, right? So you can't control when they happen, but let's continue to focus on what we can control. So remember that persistence equals profit. Keep at it. With that being said, I want us for a minute just talk about the importance for everybody to be building a storage deal pipeline. The way that you build a storage deal pipeline is following that LMAO framework, continuing to build your list. How are things? I'm going to kind of pause for a second, Dan. How are things with the virtual assistant?
They're going okay. She has taken some admin tasks off my plate, which has been really helpful, as well as doing calls for me. And the calls have been as simple as calling an owner and saying, "Are you open to selling your facility? My business partner would like a conversation with you," and scheduling time, or at least just gauging the interest.
Yeah.
And there hasn't been that much success on that front as far as generating conversations for me to have with the owners. One thing that I have found beneficial is that I've had some owners block my phone number from calling them, asking if they're open to selling. And she's actually been able to get in touch with those sellers. And it turns out 2 or 3 times she's been able to do that. And it's the same owner. So I know they haven't sold the facility yet. And in 2 of those scenarios, the owner was actually planning to sell soon. So
I love it. I love it.
I guess that's 2 successful leads.
I'm glad you're seeing that as a positive, because it's 1000% a positive. Now, do I love that they've blocked you? No, but that tells me that you've been persistent. That tells me you've been following up. And so much of this is that's a perfect transition. So much of this is building a storage lead pipeline and then following up, because very rare are you going to come to an agreement on the first conversation, right? Not to say it doesn't happen. It certainly can happen. But usually it's a series of conversations. You're building a relationship. You're figuring out the seller's needs, wants, desires. Your offer is then being crafted ideally to solve a particular problem, challenge, or ultimately, sometimes it's not a big challenge. Sometimes it's, hey, I'm just getting ready to retire. In fact, oftentimes I find that these mom and pop storage owners are just at the point where they're getting ready to retire. And your offer, crafted in a certain way, is meant to ultimately give them what they want and also have it be a win for you, right? So we have the mentality that you can structure win-win-win offers all the way around. It's not a zero-sum game. It's not, hey, I win, so you need to lose. And that's, first of all, it's the wrong mindset. Second of all, it doesn't need to be that way, right? And I've talked about, look at some of the people in our Storage Wins community that have bought storage deals, right? Like those were all win-win scenarios. Same thing with my Florida facility. So, man, I love that you're focused on the right things. And it doesn't sound like you're getting tripped up. I think it's just doubling down, doing more of what you're doing. And then make sure that at the end of the week, Dan, you're documenting, hey, here's what's worked. Here's what was positive about this week. And then here's where I need to continue to work on. Hey, I'm getting off track because I noticed this distraction keeps coming into play, right? Or XYZ. So every single week, and I don't think we've talked about this, but on Saturday, Sunday, I always look at my calendar for the coming week, and mentally, and sometimes, I don't always do this, I probably should, is write down what is your intention for that week, right? What is your intention? Like, so your intention for this week, like offers is something that you said, hey, now consistently back to back weeks, I've made 4 offers each week. So you've made 8 offers in the last 2 weeks, but you also feel like you're not hitting that number you want. So why don't this week, right? It happens to be Monday. Why don't you set an intention this week that, hey, making more offers is my intention for the week. Now you continue to do everything else, but you have a focus on making sure that you get an offer out a day to get to at least 5. And then you can continue to build from it. So at the beginning of the week, have clarity and have it operate with intentionality around what you want to accomplish that week. Of course, it's got to be aligned with your goals and purpose and your vision. At the end of the week, reflect. Just take 15 minutes. Hey, what went well this week? What did I learn? And then what do I need to continue to work on and improve? Bring that back on the Storage Wins podcast here on these coaching calls. And then, man, it's just a matter of operate with intentionality, execute, learn, tweak, modify, execute again. Learn, tweak, modify, execute, execute, execute. That's it. That's the name of the game here.
I like that.
Any takeaways, any reflections?
That learn, tweak, modify, execute, I think is a perfect summary of what we've been doing over the last month and a half that has gotten me to this point.
Yeah.
And to touch on one of the things that you mentioned a little while ago in this podcast was not being concerned that the results haven't happened yet, that it's inevitable. And I don't remember who said this last week, but they mentioned that every 30 to 50 offers, you're gonna get a deal, and it's not guaranteed, but it's just a rough estimate. And
Yep.
just hearing that made me think, yeah, it's a quantity game. It's not a quality game. So just to get those numbers up. And
It is. And look, somebody else's KPIs, 30 to 50, may or may not be your KPIs. So
right.
while I think it's good to have some type of baseline, I don't necessarily like marry or attach my expectations to somebody else's KPIs. And I think that's a mistake that a lot of real estate investors make, whether it's in storage or the single family world. But so don't be necessarily attached to, hey, I got to get to that 50th offer, but just be more attached to the process, knowing that by making offers consistently, you're giving yourself more opportunities and you're more likely to get the right deal under contract. Because that's the idea here, Dan. Like, I can help you or anybody buy their first storage deal like a lot quicker than 6 to 12 months. But it's not just about buying a storage deal. It's about buying the right storage deal. Okay. So fantastic, man. So look, let's talk about this, and I want to start to kind of, I know the last several episodes have been a little bit on the longer side, right? And I've shared with you that these episodes are as long as they need to be to make sure that you're getting the coaching you need and you're equipped so that then you can go out and execute, right? Like we work on the game plan all week long. And then on Sunday, when it's time to perform, I need you to go out there and execute. It's a little reverse here because you're executing most of the week and then we hop on here on Sundays, quote unquote, and coming up with a game plan. But and then obviously you're getting support inside of our Storage Wins coaching community. But I want to transition now into this deal. One of the ways you can build your pipeline for everybody listening is, well, there's a lot of ways, but one of them is wholesalers, right? There are people out there that are just focused on creating a lead generation machine. They get these storage deals under contract, and then they go into like the Storage Wins Facebook group and they share these opportunities. This deal came from the Storage Wins Facebook group. So again, I encourage you guys to join. It's 100% free. And there's good conversation happening in there. I'm posting and sharing things. Dan's in there. And it's just a great place to connect with people and build those relationships that I think are so important. So tell me about this deal, man. Just big picture. What do you like about it? Like, what are some of the things that potentially are appealing to you?
So the deal's in Arkansas. It's in a secondary, maybe tertiary market. And the things I like about it are that it's on a highway. It appears to be in a growing population town, and some other things. The unit count, number of units, and the size of the facility is about the sweet spot of what I'm looking for, and it has some pretty simple some indicators that it has pretty simple operations right now, so that the current owner is not
Okay.
maximizing the value of the business and the operations. So it
Indicators like what? Because I want everybody listening to like start to look at storage deals and start to pick up on what some of these clues are that you've learned and now are executing on. So like what specifically did you spot that are like, hey, this is these are indicators that maybe the operator isn't very sophisticated, or maybe they're not focused on it, or they don't have the time and energy. Maybe it's just a knowledge gap where we could potentially go in as strong storage operators and improve the operations, improve certain things to increase the occupancy, generate more revenue, increase the NOI, the net operating income, and then just increase the value of the facility overall.
the key things I would say are when you're on Google Maps and you bring the facility up, you can see it doesn't even have a website. It doesn't have the claim this business on Google Maps on the Google business profile is there, meaning the owner hasn't even claimed their business online, so they don't have control over what photos are there and some other benefits of claiming your business online. It just shows that they're not really maximizing their
Okay.
online presence, and
Did you mention, do they have a website?
they don't have a website. The rates
No
are
website, no website, no Google My Business. Prices, I would imagine, are lower than the average of the competition, the street rates.
yep, the rates are about 30% below market.
Okay, 30% below market. Does it appear like they're doing any marketing? If you look at their profit and loss statement, is there a marketing line item? By the way, I find that most times mom and pop operators are not really spending money on marketing for the most part. Now, larger facilities, particularly ones that are on the market with a broker, oftentimes those, yes, they're spending some money on marketing and advertising. But usually the smaller the facility or the smaller the town, I find that's not the case.
Yeah, there's no marketing budget right now, and I stand corrected actually on the rates and where they stand in the market. It's a pretty I don't know if it's a unsophisticated market, but there aren't that many storage facilities nearby, and there are no big name facilities nearby.
Yeah.
So no one's really pushing the rates, and that was one of the questions that I had actually about this facility is looking at its rates versus the competitor, because they appear to be already potentially a good amount higher than the competitor, but there aren't that many competitors. So
Okay, how many competitors are we talking about? While Dan's looking this up, I'll fill some of the space here by sharing. When Dan talks about the looking at the market, looking at the competitors, sometimes you hear the word sophistication, and that's not meant to be like throwing shade or an insult or a dig at somebody. But when we refer to like, hey, is it a sophisticated market? Are there sophisticated operators in the market? That's based on how they're running and operating the facility. So if I'm looking at a facility, like let's say this facility Dan's looking at, and Dan, while I'm talking, if you want to just bring everything up so you have it readily available, but if I'm looking at a facility in Arkansas or Louisiana or Texas, Florida, Georgia, any state, doesn't really matter, and I'm looking at this particular market, I'm most of the time, unless it's in a super rural part of town, right? I'm looking within a 5 mile radius. And if I look on Google Maps of all the competitors, right, in and around 5 miles from this facility, and many of them don't have websites, or if they have websites, it just looks like it's super outdated. They don't, you go through their Google reviews and maybe they don't have that many. And maybe the ones they do have, it's like you can tell reading through the reviews, which by the way is kind of like a side tip. Definitely read the reviews of the subject facility you're looking at buying and the competition, because that tells you a certain level of how customer service is, like how are the customers being served, and that can give you a lot of information about a facility that you might be buying and about the competition. So when we talk about sophistication, we're just looking like how are the others, how are people operating in this market, right? Are they running promotions? When you look at the facilities on Google Street View, do they have, is it clean? Do they have signage? Just you can just within a few minutes look at a facility, look at a market, and get a general sense for, hey, these people are dialed in, right? Like they're operating. It looks like they're operating it well, or no, there's not. I prefer to be in a market where the sophistication is not as high because I know that as a good operator, I can go in there and do certain things that my competition's not. On the flip side, though, if you're in a market, if you can find the right deal and you're in a market that has sophisticated operators, then by definition, one of the factors I think in being a sophisticated operator is that you're constantly putting upward pressure on the market in terms of the rates. You constantly want to be pushing rates. You don't want to be the one slashing prices. I mean, unless there's a strategic reason to do that. And by the way, I've done that before, right? But it's with a plan in mind, right? There was a method to the madness. But generally speaking, you want to be putting upward pressure on the market, and you want your competitors to do the same because a rising tide lifts all boats, and that's what you want to do. I find that's just many times that's not the case in these unsophisticated markets. So with that being said, Dan, I just wanted to kind of provide that context for everybody. Fill us in on what you were going to say.
So there's only one competitor within 5 miles. And then because it's a little bit more secondary, maybe a little more tertiary of a market, looking a little bit beyond the 5 miles, there are two additional competitors within a 6-mile radius. And the rates are at the one competitor that is 1 mile away. The rates are below this facility's rates. But when you stretch out a little further to the 6-mile radius, the rates are below those facilities. So they're both 5.5 miles. I suppose they'd both be competitors to this facility.
Uh-huh.
And so looking at that, then yes, the rates are about 30%, 50% below that those competitors.
Below the subject facility?
Yeah.
So the closest competitor,
the subject facility is 50% below those two competitors that are about 5.5, 6 miles away.
That's a good thing.
It's a good thing.
Okay. I thought you said at one point that the subject facility's rates are higher than the competitors.
The competitor that's 1 mile away, they're much higher than. But that's probably just another facility that I should get on the phone and call because the rates are so low.
Bingo. And that goes back to my rate gap sniper method. If you guys check out my YouTube channel, there's a video there, which we'll see if we can link that up in the show notes. But there's something I call the rate gap sniper method. Dan, we haven't covered that on the podcast yet, right? But I'll just foreshadow a little bit here. When you look at offering memorandums, which is basically a broker packet, right? When you jump on LoopNet, Crexy.com, and you pull the offering memorandum, usually it's a PDF and it's, 8, 10, 12, 15, 20 page packet that the broker puts together. Look for probably at some point in the middle of that package towards the end, there's going to be something that sometimes brokers include, sometimes they don't, that it's the rate comparison or it's the market rents. And they'll show you sometimes the brokers will do all the work for you of showing you all the facilities within the 5 mile radius, and they'll show you the rates for the different units. Well, whenever you see a competitor that has low rates, think of it like a free lead. Like that's a golden hidden opportunity. And to Dan's point, that's why Dan said, hey, that competitor that's a mile away that has even lower rates than the subject facility means the facility he's looking at buying, he should get on the phone with that facility. And that's one of the beauties of constantly looking at deals and analyzing deals every day, is that sometimes like an octopus, it'll lead you like, hey, there's a tentacle I didn't know existed, right? I.e. another opportunity, because you're researching the market, you're looking at competitors. And I know several people that have bought facilities. They've bought competing facilities, meaning they were looking at a certain facility, but because they got exposed to the market and the competitors, they ended up buying a competitor, if that makes sense. So, okay.
Yep.
So Dan, having said that, man, like I want to start to kind of wind down the show here. Like what questions do you have about, first of all, you haven't made an offer yet, right? Because I just sent this to you like earlier today.
Yeah, I haven't made an offer.
Okay. Do you have any questions, concerns? Is there anything that we need to unpack here? Or do you feel pretty confident about the direction you want to go in here with an offer?
My biggest question would be, I've made a number of offers to this wholesaler on facilities, leads that he's brought to his list. And I typically seem to be a bit shy of the price that he ends up wholesaling them at. And I don't know how far off I've been. Maybe that's a conversation I need to have with him.
Absolutely.
But I usually underwrite them or analyze them, come up with my offers, and they're always like a certain amount shy. It always seems to be.
Yeah, I get it. So
Where
you touched on it. Anytime I make an offer, in fact, we had David from Franklin Street present and share gold on one of our recent Storage Wins coaching calls. Right, Dan, remember what David said, like, hey, when you make an offer, even if it's a low offer, you want to send an email and ideally pick up the phone before you make the offer and explain the offer and how you got there. In other words, create a soft landing, especially when the offer is going to be significantly less. And ask for price guidance and say, hey, listen, if I'm missing something, like, let me know. Here's what I'm seeing. Here's how I came up with the offer, based on X, Y, Z. And David from Franklin Street said how much more he appreciates when somebody takes that approach versus they take the time and energy to present the deal. And then the worst thing you could do is not get back to them. The second worst thing you could do is not get back to them in a timely manner. And the third worst thing you could do, kind of going down the line here from worst to not as bad, is you just send a super lowball offer. Now they want offers, but what's the best thing you can do is they present you an opportunity, you get back to them quickly, like within 24 hours, ideally the same day. And when you make an offer, you pick up the phone and say, hey, David, or hey, Dan, hey, I just wanted to let you know, based on our previous conversation, I know you wanted me to put an offer together. I'm coming in significantly less than your ask. I realize there's a gap here. Just wanted to explain to you and share with you how I got here, right? Because I didn't just pick a number out of the air. Boom, 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 boom. They may or may not agree with you, but at least they have an understanding as to where you're coming from. And now they can present you. And I emphasize the word you, because brokers, yes, they're making an offer, but sellers and brokers have conversations about who the buyer is. Hey, tell me about the buyer. What's their experience? Like, what do they have? What do they not have? So one thing we'll talk about in a future episode, Dan, which we've discussed in our Storage Wins community, is like the secret weapon, which is like the buyer info sheet. And I know that when I kind of taught you that method, like within 24 hours, you had your 1-page buyer info sheet, which now you present to brokers when you make an offer. And it's basically like, think of it as your resume, as like your hit list of like, hey, here's who Dan Wenzel is. Here's like why I'm in this asset class, what I've accomplished, what I'm doing. You're part of the Storage Wins community. I know David talked a lot about that, right? If you have a coach or you're part of a community, make sure that you highlight that in your buyer info sheet and you communicate that, because banks and brokers see that as a big, big positive. It shows that you're serious. So anyways, we kind of got off track, but I wanted to share that. So back to you, do the same exact thing with wholesalers, Dan. Like, so this guy, and I won't mention his name, right? But pick up the phone, call him and say, hey, man, I know I've submitted offers in the past on your deals. And remember, speak in terms of benefits to them. like, I appreciate you giving me these opportunities. And I also want you to know, like, I'm a serious buyer and I want to build a relationship with you, right? I realize that I've come in less. Um, Give me a little bit of guidance here. Like, here's how I'm coming up with my offers. And I realize, look, if you have a higher offer, like, I totally get it. But I'm somebody who's not going to waste your time. I'm not going to tie up a deal and then try to retrade on you or anything like that, meaning like renegotiate. And I'm here to get it done. Like, I'll see it to the finish line, provided I just have, the important documentation and everything is disclosed up front. I said, I'd like to make an offer on this thing, but I'm coming in less than where you're at. And, I want to get on the board with you, so to speak. I'd love to build a relationship. I mean, I realize it's got to make sense for you. I appreciate the fact that, you spend a lot of time, energy, and money finding these deals. And I want you to make as much as possible. The deal also has to work for me. And of course, it's got to work for your seller. So I just shot from the hip there, right? But you kind of see how I framed that conversation and I packaged it up in a way that anybody could really understand.
Yeah. I don't know how you come up with all that off the top of your head. That was gold.
Yeah. It's just kind of, you know what it is, Dan? It's not that I have like some magic approach or magic words, because I don't, right? I'm just, number one, I'm being myself, but number two, I'm speaking from their shoes, not from mine, right? So whenever you deal with somebody, whether it's a storage owner, a wholesaler, a broker, communicate in terms of benefits to them. Now, obviously, like, you're not, this is not a nonprofit. I mean, obviously the deal has to make sense for you. So I'm not trying to communicate in a way where I'm telling you to hide the fact that, like, you want to buy this because you want to make money with it. I think that's a given, and they understand that. And there's a way that you can communicate where it's in terms of what benefits to them. And we talked about that on the last episode, right? Like, everybody's favorite radio station, WIIFM. Like, what's in it for me? So that's how I want you to communicate in terms of the benefit to them.
Yep.
Okay?
Yeah.
So look, I think the takeaway here is, you know what to do. And we'll, on future episodes, guys, we will dive deeper into like the analysis, the numbers, like how we came up with it. And what I'd like you to do is remind me and have the audience. I'd love for the audience to remind me. I want you to give us an update, not just on this offer you've made, but going forward. I want you to share, hey, here's the tracking of my KPIs. Here's how many offers I made. Here are the results of those offers. Hey, I haven't heard from this seller, or this seller said no. There was a counter, there was a this, the that, so that we can now start to kind of dissect what are the next steps from here.
The results of my offers.
The results of your offers, absolutely. Because at the end of the day, like, it's important that we track how many offers you make, but you also have to remember, you now have made 8 offers. Each one of those offers deserves a follow-up. Now, you don't want to do it in a way that you're chasing, right? That you're like the thirsty dog, like, jumping at the owner, like, no, like, you attract, you don't chase. And so how you follow up is important. And the fact that you have a follow-up system is also important. So we'll talk about that. But I wanna kind of pause here and ask you if there's any takeaways, any reflections, any comments, like anything you want to share that you've gotten from this podcast episode, this session, and anything that you might want to encourage people listening to you that are following along in your journey here. Just anything you might want to share with them or even with me.
Yeah, I've been jotting a bunch of notes down because you keep saying good stuff that I want to remember. One would be to, at the end of each week, note what's worked and what I need to continue to work on. And it's like the learn, tweak, modify, execute that you mentioned. And that's implementing all the things I've learned from you and from the previous week of executing to continue getting better.
Well, remember, the only edit I'll make to what you said is it's learn, and if I said that before incorrectly, I have to amend that. It's learn, execute, tweak, and modify. Like, the tweak and the modify comes after the execution, because that's where a lot of the learning is going to come from.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Learn, execute. What's the correct order?
Yeah, it's tweak and modify is very similar. It's think of the acronym LET or LEM. Learn, execute, tweak and modify.
Yeah.
Or tweak or modify, right?
That makes more sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Beautiful. You got something else?
That's pretty much it. Yeah.
Okay.
That's
Here's where I want the accountability to come in. You've consistently done 4 offers the last couple of weeks, right? I'm not even gonna really challenge you. If you can get 4, you can get 6. And I know that you've been at 4. I want to jump it to 6. Can you get 6 offers out this week?
I can go for it.
The answer is yes, you can. 100% you can.
Yeah.
Remember, because even if you're not able to have as many meaningful conversations with storage owners, there's wholesalers and brokers. You can jump online and get access to storage. I don't want to call them deals, but storage opportunities at a moment's notice. So you already have the tools. You know how to analyze. You know how to have the conversations. You can make the offer now. So really all you got to do, brother, is let's say today, right? If you haven't made an offer, let's get 1 offer out today. And that could be the one that you just finished working on. That's 1 offer out today. If you do another one on Tuesday, another one on Wednesday, another one on Thursday, that's 4. All you got to do is get 2 out on Friday and you hit that goal. Right?
Simple as that.
I mean, honestly, it really is. It really is. Yeah, at least in my brain. I don't know. So really, let's pause for the next episode, right? Because if you don't hit that goal, I need to know specifically why. I need to know what is getting in your way of being able to make out more offers or send out more offers. Is it you're just not connecting with enough people? Is it your offer process isn't streamlined and it's clunky and it's there's something. Where's the roadblock when it comes to making offers? Okay. But I believe you'll hit there. I believe you'll hit the goal. 6 offers. And by the way, once you do that, that'd be 14 offers in the last 3 weeks. Right? That's almost an average of 5 a week. So by getting 6 out, we're going to increase your average. Now think about it. In the last 3 weeks, that would have been 14, 15 offers, where at one point you went, a 1.5 years making 18 offers in total. So you could potentially, in the next couple of weeks, you can hit the number you sent out in total offers in the previous 18 months. Right? That is what's going to, those at-bats is going to feed your confidence, give you more opportunities to connect with people. And by the way, those are also more follow-up opportunities with storage owners. So let's go ahead and wind this one down. For everybody listening, I trust you're getting a lot out of these episodes. I think you are. My expectation is you are. If you've been following along, or if you haven't and you've been somewhat inconsistent, all good. I encourage you to listen to the first episode here of the Storage Wins podcast season 2. Like, binge them, because you can use this game plan, this roadmap, and you can follow along and just modify it to your situation. And if you couple things to invite you to. I've mentioned it, the Storage Wins Facebook community. That's 100% free. There'll be a link in the show notes, or just search the Storage Wins inside of Facebook and you'll find this. And then if you want to go deeper and you want to join this community that Dan's a part of, storagewins.com. And then lastly, make sure you're subscribed to the podcast so that you get notified with every single episode that gets released. So Dan, any parting thoughts, man?
Yeah, nothing.
All right.
Fun.
No, you're good. Ben, don't apologize. Just execute, right?
Yep.
Learn, execute, tweak, and/or modify, right? So, all right, my friends, I will see you on the next one. Take care.